everybody. Welcome to Bayou Bets. It is Thursday, December the 28th, 2023. Besides what you might think, it is not our last show of 2023. We'll be on again tomorrow. Before we go further, we will remind you that Caesars Sportsbook is the official odds partner of bet.noah.com. We politely ask you to subscribe to our YouTube channel where you can find out whenever we're going on, especially at special times like tomorrow at 3 o'clock, to talk about the college football bowl weekend that is to come. And I will do that with my friend Tom Casale here. Tom, what's going on?
Not too much. Had a nice little break here, ready to jump back into it. We'll get to it, but the Saints it is what it is at this point, right?
Yikes, no doubt about it. And we will spend most of the show talking about the Saints. Is this the last hurrah? Well, I mean, if they lose, there's no question it's the last hurrah. So that's what we will be talking about, whether we think it's the last hurrah, whether you think it's the last hurrah, because you're more than welcome to leave your comments, whether you're watching on YouTube, whether you're watching on Facebook, whether you're watching on Twitter/X, whatever you want to call it. Leave your comments in the stream, and it will show up here, and we will show them on the screen. We're previewing the game against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers on Sunday, New Year's Eve. Saints-Bucs, we know what happened the last time the Saints-Bucs played. It was in the Dome. It was week 4. It was not pretty for the New Orleans Saints. And then we're going to have a couple – after we finish talking about the Saints, we've got some interesting discussion. Sean Payton making some big moves in Denver, whether it be related to finding his way to cut his quarterback, Russell Wilson. Sean Payton gets what he wants, right? We're going to talk about that coming up later on in the show. Also, there are some futures, maybe not the value we saw a couple of weeks ago, Thomas, but definitely some value in the NFL futures market that we're going to talk about. That's coming up after we talk about the Saints. Obviously, first, it is Saints-Bucs weekend. Saints slim playoff chances. They do live or die Sunday in Tampa. Thomas, if they lose on Sunday, they are officially mathematically eliminated, although in the hearts of many Hoodats, they've been eliminated weeks ago.
Yeah, I mean, listen, maybe I'm a little slow to come around here because I bet the Saints preseason, but I thought they'd put up a better effort against the Rams. And the thing with this team, Jim, and I told you this earlier, is I feel like they're just there. They're just going through the motions, I don't know. I don't see any kind of adjustments. Like, how many times are you going to run Alvin Kamara up the middle? It's not working. You know what I mean? I don't know. My son made a point. I'd like to get your opinion on this as maybe a mistake I made. Now, he associates talent. He's young. He associates talent with fantasy, right? So he said to me, he's like, do the Saints have a lot of good players? He says, it seems to me like they don't really have a lot of great players. And I thought about it for a second. And, I think one of the mistakes I made and others who were high on this team coming into the year was I think I overestimated their talent from top to bottom on this team. I mean, they have some good players, but the overall talent, I don't know. I mean, what's your opinion on that?
It's interesting you say that because I was listening to the Saints Insider Show yesterday on our other channels with Zach Ewing and all of our Saints beat writers, and they were talking about something very similar to that. I don't think the Saints' talent is overestimated. I really don't. I just don't think there's effort there.
Yeah.
Look, I think Derek Carr's busting his butt. People can say whatever they want about Derek Carr, and they blame a lot of things on Derek Carr. I don't think it's for lack of trying. I think he's just put in a situation by his offensive coordinator to where he's basically set up to fail. There was someone that posted something on my Twitter page earlier today about how Derek Carr was successful. If you look at his numbers and just the overall team when John Gruden was in Las Vegas and in Oakland, I guess. And it's true. I mean, he was a different kind of quarterback when he's given the chance to succeed. And I understand why fans are ticked off. And I'm not saying their points aren't valid because they are. He's definitely not played well, but he's been hurt a lot too. He hasn't had a lot of time to throw the dang ball. I mean, let's get real about it. But you look at guys like Chris Olave, who I think has all the talent in the world for a young receiver, and he's like half-assing routes. He's just not running them half the time. He's dropping balls that are right in his hands. The Saints don't use. I was joking about how old Jimmy Graham is, but you know what? Jimmy Graham's successful in the red zone. He's successful inside the 10, can pretty much score whenever he wants, and they don't use him. They don't use Taysom Hill the right way. They haven't used Alvin Kamara, who's now about to hit 30 years old. So I think the talent's there, especially on offense. I just don't think they're used properly.
Yeah, no, it's a good point, and I agree with the effort. It's like they roll out, they're there. If they win, they win. If they lose, they lose. I don't even see like any emotion when things are going bad or good. And
No.
I'll be honest, the highest I was on the Saints this year, I think, was the Lions game after they fell down big early. That was the one game I thought they showed some fight. They had some urgency to them. So even though they lost that game close, I was kind of upbeat about them after that game. But that was really the one time I saw that.
I agree with you because they easily could have folded their 10 down 21-0 early in the game. They did fight back and they almost won the dang game. But even against the Rams, they fight back into the sets. They're down 30-7 or whatever it was. They fight all the way back. They get to within one score, and then just kind of boneheaded coaching mistakes and lack of awareness almost of where you are in the game. And so, look, this coaching staff has been a mess. I think when you talk about lack of effort, to me, that is squarely on the shoulders of a coaching staff. I hate comparing anybody to Sean Payton because it's not the same. I get it. I understand. But you never saw lack of effort on Sean Payton's team because if you had lack of effort on his team, you're gone, no matter who you are. I mean, look at how much his defenses have improved. Vance Joseph could have folded his tent and said, you know what, after 70-20, I'm getting fired. And the defense could have just said, we quit. We stink. They didn't quit. They got back in the playoff race. Now they're pretty much done now, and they're using Jarrett Stidham, and we'll get to that in a little bit. But Sean Payton's teams don't quit, and there are so many times this year, and it's so frustrating to see this team just kind of fold its tent. And it's the second year in a row they kind of did that. They kind of put their tail between their legs last year. And then when it was basically over, they came out and won 3 games in a row last year when it didn't matter. So it's just frustrating because they proved that they can play well at times. They just don't know how to do it on a consistent basis.
Yeah, and listen, coaching, a big part of it is motivation, right? And
Yep.
I know fans get upset when the Patriots or Clemson comes in and says that the world was against us and all this stuff. But the reason they do that is because Dabo or Belichick has the players believing that it works for them. And, you got to find something there. To me, this has been the same team almost every week. They've beaten a couple of bad teams. I just haven't seen much. It's just been kind of one average. They're just going through the motions team the entire season.
Well, and that is exactly what we've seen. And there's no reason for these numbers to be what they are against the teams that they've played.
Right.
And again, and the sad part is, and people hate when I say this, and listeners will drop off when I say this, but it's the truth. You don't want to hear this, but this can be worse next year. This guy's probably not going anywhere. I can't see them firing Dennis Allen. Now, I can see them forcing him to make changes to his staff. I can see Pete Carmichael resigning on his own, and I think that probably will happen. If he doesn't resign, I think he will be fired. But he didn't want the job in the first place, so I can't imagine he wouldn't resign. But I think Dennis Allen's here. I think that he will make some new hires and make adjustments to his staff. But, with the salary cap construction the way that it is and the Saints being in a whole lot of trouble next year, we've said this before, but they can't kick the can any further. They're basically in a position of where they're going to have to start over. So they've got this high-priced quarterback in Derek Carr. They've got an aging running back in Alvin Kamara. They've got an offensive line that isn't any good, and I don't know that they can fix any of those things. They don't have any money. So unless they draft fantastically, which probably isn't going to happen, I think it's going to get any better. And people talk about wanting to draft a quarterback. There are so many things the Saints need more than a quarterback right now. It needs to start with their offensive line because if they don't get an offensive line, it's not going to matter who their quarterback is. It just doesn't, and they need to address that first.
Yeah, and Jim, something important I think you said is about the teams they played. I'll give you an objective view here. This is a fantasy draft in upstate New York before I started working here. Me and my buddies had our regular league. There was one outburst during the entire draft. Someone picked the Saints defense, and a guy went crazy because he was next up and he was going to take the Saints defense. Right. And and his reasoning was, that's going to be one of the top 2 or 3 defenses in football with that schedule. I mean, look at these teams they're playing. So that's just an objective kind of, I think the thought was with the way the Saints defense played last year, top 10 scoring total, coming back, new quarterback. with that kind of schedule that they have, and they have had a favorable schedule.
Oh, that's putting it kindly.
Yeah, they have disappointed. And I think the average fan thinks that, not just you.
And if you look at the number on the screen, is why we put them up, to show how disappointing they've been. I think if to start the season, if you would have told me we were going into the second to last week of the season and the Saints would rank defensively overall 14th, I would have told you, A, I didn't believe you, and B, that would be horrendously disappointing. 14th for this defense that's supposed to be one of the better defenses in the league. I thought there would be a top 5 kind of defense because of what you said, the schedule. I have them in one of my fantasy leagues as well because of that reason. And so it is a big disappointment. They're 25th against the run. I mean, what real running backs have they played this year?
Yeah.
What running backs jump out at you and you say, oh, that guy scares the hell out of me? I mean, maybe the Lions' defensive backfield. I don't know, but there's no reason, there's no excuse for being 25th against the run. They have not solved their defensive line woes at all. And, that's another thing. People want to keep blaming Derek Carr for a lot of things. Derek Carr doesn't play defense. I think the defense has been miserably average at best. And so if you would have told me the offense was going to be 14th, you got an average type quarterback. They're 12th in passing, which is better than average. They're 14th in total offense, which is slightly better than average. Okay, I could buy that. I could see that. In fact, if you would have told me they've got a 14th ranked offense, I would have told you, hey, this team's overachieving. They got like 10 or 11 wins going into that second to last week. But no, here we are at 7-8, and it's a lot because of their defense, and it's a lot because of coaching.
Yep, and let's say, like what you said, when I bet them back in August to win the division, and if you told me they were going to rank 14th in defense in Week 17, I wouldn't have made the bet. My whole thing was Derek Carr can't be any worse than what they had last year at quarterback. If this same defense shows up, they're winning the division. Yep. And it hasn't. And after all the bad news, in a minute we're going to tell you that the Saints can still make the playoffs, which is pretty amazing.
And that's a great segue into where we are right now, because if you look at the Bucs and just take numbers, this is why stats don't mean everything. They mean something, but not everything. Look at the Saints. If you just if you didn't watch anything, if you woke up from a long winter's hibernation nap, okay, and you woke up and you saw these numbers and you didn't look at the main headline. You said, well, the Saints are ranked 14th in offense. That's okay. Defense 14th. That's disappointing. But then you look at the Bucs. You're like, oh, well, the Saints at least are better than the Bucs. They got to be favored, right? They got to be. It's got to be them and the Falcons. No, it's the Bucs who are in control of this division with the 23rd ranked offense and the 24th ranked defense and the worst pass defense in the NFL. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers have a probably better than 1-6 shot to win this division.
Listen, I haven't believed in the Bucs all year. I can't believe they're going to win this division. And I'll tell you this, Jim. I'm rarely
not sure that they're going to win this division.
Well, if they do, I rarely bet the Cowboys. I do, but I'm telling you this. Don't overthink it in the playoffs. I know Dallas isn't as good on the road. They'll go into Tampa Bay and they will smoke this team. They will have 7 sacks. Dak will throw for 300 yards. This, to me, credit the team, credit Baker Mayfield and everything. But this team, to me, is fool's gold.
Yeah, that'll be a CD Lamb over kind of game if there ever was one. I mean, the worst ranked passing defense in the NFL and warm weather of Tampa. It's not really, unless it's just raining, it's not going to be that much different than Jerry World. And I just tell you, that's exactly what's going to happen. Now, I guarantee you the Dallas Cowboys, you want to talk about who they might play in the first round. I'd be willing to bet they're rooting for the Bucs to win this division because the Saints are so inconsistent. You don't know what Saints team you're going to get. You know what Bucs team you're going to get. You're going to get an average quarterback with a below average running game, with an okay offensive line, and a decent defensive front, but so it's tougher to run the ball, but you just put it on Dak's shoulders. They'll win the game easily. And the Saints, meanwhile, they've had games where they can play well defensively. You just don't know what you're going to get.
Yeah, and listen, the bottom line is this. The number next to the Bucs pass defense is 32nd. If your pass defense is worse than Washington, that's pretty impressive because Washington is the worst I've seen all season. Right? Washington is responsible for the whole Tommy Cutlets craze because that was his one really good game was against them. So that shows how bad this Bucs pass defense is.
Well, they're fired defensive coordinator Jack Del Rio is actually a former defensive coordinator here in New Orleans. So there you go. That kind of says all you need to know, isn't it? All right, let's talk about this game. We talk about the slim playoff chances. All right, if you don't know what needs to happen, all right, if you haven't figured it out, we're going to make this as easy as possible. First of all, if the Saints are going to make the playoffs, and I know a lot of you are rooting against it, but if the Saints are going to make the playoffs, one thing that definitely has to happen is the Saints have to win both of their last 2 games. They're 2.5-point underdogs in Tampa. They will be favored at home against Atlanta, assuming they win this game here on Sunday in Tampa. Then, to win the division, they need Tampa Bay. After they would lose to the Saints, they would need to lose against Carolina. I believe that is on the road. I believe it is at Carolina the following Sunday. And you say, well, there ain't no chance of that. I beg to differ. We've seen Atlanta go into Carolina a couple weeks ago, and they lost. So it's not out of the question that it could happen. But if that doesn't happen, if the Saints don't win the NFC South, they still can win a wild card. It's probably not as hard as you think. It's not easy, but it's probably not as hard as you think. They would need to win both of their last 2 games, and then they would need the Rams and Seattle to lose at least one of their last 2. Very possible. The Rams play the Niners coming up. Seattle's got Pittsburgh this weekend. I can't remember. I think they finished with the Cardinals, so you probably want them to lose this week. And then you would also need the winner of the Packers-Vikings game on Sunday to lose their final game. I know that the Vikings are playing against Detroit, who will still need to win. And then the Packers, the Bears are not their daddy anymore. So it's not the same way without Aaron Rodgers. I think that will be a tough game. So it's not out of the question, but the New York Times playoff predictor says the Saints have a 12% chance to make the playoffs. I think that's probably about right.
Yeah, and the part I don't get is where you said some people don't want them to make the playoffs. Like, what's the difference at this point? Like, what are you trying to get? Like the 15th pick in the draft instead of the 16th pick in the draft?
The Saints fans are so convinced that if they don't make the playoffs, that Dennis Allen's going to be gone. It's not going to happen. They're convinced. That's what they want to happen. I get why they want it. I don't disagree with them. Don't hate me for saying this. That's what they want to happen. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah, see, I guess I think differently. Like for me, I don't think one win, like making or not making, is he the coach or isn't he? You know what I mean? Like if sneaking into the playoffs shouldn't decide if you're going to remain the coach, or missing it by a half a game shouldn't decide. But I guess teams don't think that way.
I'm not even into losing on purpose, even if it means the number 1 draft pick or the number 2 draft pick. I guess the only way that I would be for it is if you have your quarterback already, you have your quarterback, and your draft capital of the number 1 pick is worth more than just having the number 1 pick, maybe. But, fans are unrealistic in thinking that their teams are going to make the right decision. Just because you have a higher draft pick doesn't mean you're going to make the right pick. If you have the 8th pick instead of the 13th pick, so what? The Saints might pick the same guy at 13 that they would have picked at 8. That's who they are. They have their board, and a lot of times their board doesn't match everyone else's board. And it's why you say in the first round, Peyton Turner, what? Andrews, Pete, what? This year, Brian Brzee has been okay. Isaiah Foskey in the second round, what? I mean, so I don't think it really matters where the Saints pick.
Yeah, and like you said, listen, I remember a couple years ago, Giants fans will remember this. They had a chance to take a guy named Micah Parsons. They traded down and took Kadarius Toney. So just because you have a high pick doesn't mean it's going to end up well for you, right? It's I always say, listen, you want to win when you can win. I don't know what's going to happen a year from now. Who knows? I mean, your quarterback could get hurt. You never know what's going to happen in the future.
Could be a 3-win team next year, and you're begging for a win at any point. I mean, enjoy the wins when they can come, and that's why I've been saying all along. They should enjoy this ride. Enjoy having a chance to make the playoffs. You don't know when this team's going to have a chance to make the playoffs. It may not come again for a while. So, anyway, that being said, let's make our prediction on the Saints-Tampa game before we move on. There are other things that we want to talk about in the NFL because I think we have some interesting numbers, and I do want to get to Sean Payton talk after this. How do you see this Saints-Bucs game breaking down when you look at these numbers?
Yeah, the one thing I think the total's a little low. You mentioned the Bucs defense isn't very good, and Rashad White should have some success running against the 25th ranked Saints rush defense. So I could see this actually going over the total. I can't trust I don't know. They let me down last game. I thought it was good. I thought they win or lose. I thought they were going to play well against the Rams. I'm going to go 27-20 Bucs. I think the Saints have run out of lives.
Good handicappers have short memories, my friend. I just don't. You can't. To me, I think last week was easy to predict because the Saints just did not at all match up well with the Rams. They just did. They could play them 16 times. I don't know if they'd beat them twice. I really don't. They just don't match up well with a team that can pass like the Rams, and they're not going to. This team, I know that they stunk against them the first time, but I think a lot of the pressure is going to be off this team now because I think some of them, unlike other teams where we think, you know what, we still got a shot at the playoffs. Look what they did last year when it was basically it's over now. They came out and won 3 games in a row, the only 3-game winning streak of this coach's career. I think it's going to happen again. You can't win 3 in a row. There's only 2 left. But I think they're going to win this game. I think they're going to play some of their best football of the year on the road at Tampa and just kind of throw care to the wind. I think Derek Carr is going to have a good game. And if you look at the 32nd ranked pass defense, it's going to be a Derek Carr kind of game. I think the offensive line should have some decent success. It is tough to run against them, but I do think the last time they played him, Derek Carr was hurt. If you remember, his shoulder was hurt in that game, and he ended up missing half the game. Saints had a lot of issues in that game. Anyway, I think the Saints win this game. I definitely see your point about the over. I'm going to stick with my prediction from my column, which I think I said 23-17 Saints or somewhere thereabouts, which would be under. But I could easily see this game going over. This is not a total I would want to play. The only reason why I say that is I think the defense is going to be able to play a little bit better game. Baker Mayfield is due for a letdown. He's played very well over the course of the last month in their 4-game winning streak, and I think it's about time that he takes a nosedive. Look at these numbers. I mean, like I said, 23rd and 24th. Everybody's talking great about Baker Mayfield. Just because they're 23rd ranked offense, I don't think that's a reason to get excited about the Bucs offense at all. That's just my opinion. But we'll see what happens there. All right, let's move on. I do want to talk again. You see some numbers here on the bottom of the screen. We're going to get to futures in just a minute. But I want to get your take on the whole Sean Payton debacle this week. And if anyone's kind of living under a rock, it's easy to do during the holidays if you missed it. Russell Wilson is not going to start at quarterback, I believe, for both this game and the last game of the season. Sean Payton is going with Jarrett Stidham. Now, the interesting thing about this is it kind of triggers a clause in Russell Wilson's contract where he can be cut and the team can save $37 million after the season is over if he fails a physical. And they give them, basically, this is giving them a reason to say that Russell Wilson is not physically capable, Thomas.
Yeah, it's pretty obvious he's not going to be on the team next year. Whatever. Him and Peyton just don't mesh. Like you mentioned earlier today, how he's always screaming at him, and he never screamed at Drew Brees. A couple of things. One, I thought Russell Wilson played better than he did last year, which isn't that big of a compliment, right? Yeah. He played awful last year. But I also think Twitter's going too far the other way. Right. I don't know how great he's played. Like, he did not play well against the Patriots at all. And listen, you always know when Belichick sniffs something. He had Russell Wilson sniffed out that entire game, which means he's easy to read. I don't know. I saw someone on Twitter, I can't remember who it was, or I credit him, said that Sean Payton has a lot of plays he likes to run. And when he had Drew Brees, he could run those plays. And he's really had to scale back the offense for Russell Wilson, and it's just not working between the two.
Yeah, no, I think that's definitely true. And you talk about Bill Belichick. I'm not sure where he lands, if he stays with the Patriots or goes elsewhere. But couldn't you see Russell Wilson go and find Bill Belichick somewhere next year? I can easily see that because Russell Wilson's not going to make half of what he's making right now.
No. It's going to be interesting because again, I thought he played better this year.
He was awful at 22. So.
Awful. And, hey, what does he have left? I mean, it's there's been, there's always talk that he's a hard person to be around. Yeah. And, I know Belichick doesn't like to be around hard people. I can tell you that, especially, at this age. I mean, he's in his mid-70s now. Yeah. It's going to be interesting.
Yeah, they definitely will. I am still on. I don't know why. I know I'm in the minority when I say this. I think Belichick is going to stay at least one more year or 2 more years there because I think there is a future in New England. I think if they get a quarterback, I actually think that team could be okay. I like I think their offensive line's okay. I like Ramondre Stevenson. I know he's hurt right now. I think they have a decent core of young receivers there. Their defense is decent. I think they can be okay, and he might want to stay there and have something to prove, show why he thinks he's a Hall of Fame. Well, he's definitely a Hall of Fame coach, but he may stay there. We'll see
The
how that
only
works out.
place I can see him going would be the Chargers because they have a built-in quarterback. Like I said, Bill's in his mid-70s. He's not going to go someplace and rebuild. He can stay in New England. And like you said, their defense has had a ton of injuries this year. When they've been healthy, they've been a good defense. So it's not like he's got to start from scratch in New England. I mean, he's not going to leave New England and go to Washington. Let's be honest.
So you say he's not coming to New Orleans?
No, I don't think so. I don't think that's Bill's kind of place.
All right, some futures down here in the bottom, and I said this before we went on the air. I'm the one that jumps out of me more than anything. There are two numbers that one that upsets me and one I love, and I'm gonna share both of them. The one that upsets me is about 2 weeks ago. I was talking about betting on Kevin Stefanski as coach of the year. I think the job that he's done with the Browns to keep this team together, and now he's on quarterback number 4. He brought Joe Flacco back from the dead, and he should be coach of the year. I don't think there's any question he should be coach of the year. You could have got him for like plus 700, plus 800 just a couple weeks ago, and now he's basically the overwhelming favorite at minus 115, a little worse than even money, kind of like betting on a game. What do you think of those coach of the year odds?
Yeah, they're interesting. See, to me, I have trouble understanding why Dan Campbell is way ahead of the Colts coach. If the Colts make the playoffs, man, that guy, I had them winning 4 or 5 games at best. That's a heck of a job he's done. Now they might lose their next 2 games here. I can understand why Stefanski's the favorite for sure, but I don't know why Campbell. They were the clear favorites to win that division,
Wholeheartedly,
and they still don't have it wrapped up, which is. Or no, they won the division. They won the division last week. But I don't know why. I guess that's more. People love Dan Campbell, that kind of thing. So yeah, these odds have been interesting. Like we talked earlier about MVP odds are changing every week. What is 9 different players have been favorite this year to win the NFL MVP? That's crazy.
And somebody different almost every week the last 6 weeks.
And that'll happen the year that Patrick Mahomes isn't having a great season.
Right.
When Mahomes is having a good season, he's going to be the favorite all year, right? I thought, to me personally, Jim, the one here that surprises me the most, I'm surprised that after last week's butt whooping, that the Niners are still that big of favorites to win the Super Bowl over the Ravens. I thought it would be a lot closer. Maybe they think the Ravens have a tougher road to get to the Super Bowl. They don't have but that one surprised me a little bit only because of how much odds move now from a week-to-week basis.
Yeah. I think that I don't understand. To me, it should be Stefanski, Steichen, and Ryans. To me, those should be the only three
I agree.
people in there. And the reason why I probably wouldn't vote for Ryans, he would be third on my list because C.J. Stroud has just been good. So, and you've seen when he hasn't played, even though they beat Tennessee without him a couple weeks ago. I just think that they're a different team without C.J. Stroud. But I agree with you. I thought the Colts were going to be absolutely awful this year. And how Shane Steichen made something out of that team. And I don't like Anthony Richardson, but when you lose the guy that you're putting your future into in like week 3 or week 4, and you lose him and you still go on and win like 8 games, it's saying a whole lot. So between Stefanski and Steichen, I think what both of those guys have been done have been amazing. Either one of them, if they were to win. But I agree with you. Dan Campbell was supposed to win. I don't get why he's even in there at all.
Yeah, and I agree with you about Ryan. Those are the 3. If I had a vote, those would be my top 3 in some order. And I don't even think there's a debate for anybody else.
I agree. So the fact that D'Amico Ryans is plus 1,000 is kind of crazy. Same number as Jim Harbaugh. I think that's kind of weird. All right. The other number that I want to talk about that sticks out at me that I love, and I said this in my column last week, the reason why I predicted the Ravens, I didn't know to beat the Niners. I didn't know if I was making that prediction more because I thought it was going to happen because I wanted it to happen. Now, this one I am going to bet. I said last week that last week the NFC was -3 to win the Super Bowl. If the Ravens could just win that game, it's going to drop by a point to -2. Sure enough, it did. I think that is the bargain on this board. There isn't a better bargain on this board, in my opinion, than NFC -2, because I think whoever wins out of the NFC, and I know you're probably going to disagree with me because we had some different talks in pre-production. I think whoever wins the NFC is the easy winner in the Super Bowl. That's my opinion.
Yeah, I think if it's the Niners, it makes I'm not going to hold that. Yeah, we live in an instant reaction world now. Brock Purdy is should be a backup in the NFL because he had one good game. Nobody cares about the one bad game. No one cares about the 6 good games he had before that. My problem is this: if for some reason something happened to Purdy early in the playoffs again, and the Eagles beat the 49ers, the Eagles defense to me has so many question marks. That would be my one concern there. I would like the Niners probably in a rematch with the Ravens because I think it's going to be a lot different the second time around.
Never happens the way that we think it's going. Mm-hmm. Carlos says he thinks the Texans are winning the Super Bowl.
There you go.
Carlos, you need to run to the window, my friend. If you think the Texans are going to win the Super Bowl, I think the odds are somewhere around 40-1. And Gabe's like praying. He's praying back there that Carlos is right. I think that's a little wishful thinking. They may win the Super Bowl in the near future, but it ain't going to be this year. Look, my thinking is this. I think the Niners are a good bet at plus 225. I don't think that's great value. Anytime you're talking about 2 weeks left in a regular season and a team is 2-1, I mean, that's kind of a little high for me. But I don't know that there's any team in the AFC that I don't think that the Dolphins can win. I just don't think they can go through a run. I don't think they can be consistent enough to beat good teams and go on a run, even if they get some kind of home field advantage. I know you and I disagree on this, but I'm not a believer in Lamar Jackson at all.
I'm not a believer in him in the playoffs.
Okay. Well, until he proves to me that he can win, I just haven't seen him in the playoffs prove to me that he can do anything in the playoffs. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe he'll do it this year. Well, he's going to do it eventually. He's got a better receiving core. Yeah, but until you prove that you can do something, I'm not believing in it. So, to me, the 49ers have the pedigree, the background, and so it's either 49ers, and I know people will laugh at me when I say this, but I'm still going on the other. It's either Chiefs or Buffalo, I think, are the best team in the AFC. And I know as bad as the Chiefs have played, people can always laugh and say, well, look what happened last week. It's always look what happened last week. People don't look at the course of who they have. They still have Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes. It's not like they still don't have the horses to win the game. I think their defense is so much improved that I actually think because of that defense, they can make a run. And for Buffalo, if Josh Allen continues to play like he's played the last month or month and a half, then Buffalo can make a run. But they're going to have to do it away from home, and that's what I'm not sure they can do.
Well, what you're saying, I agree with. Like, what you're saying about Mahomes, he's earned that. Lamar Jackson hasn't. You know what I mean? Like Lamar, I saw, I know people are having fun, but last week they had a picture of Mahomes with Mac Jones on the back of his jersey, and this is what he would look like in Chicago without listen. Mahomes is the best player on the planet. That's There's it. No I don't know. You can, yeah. And here's what I think that's happened. Not only is in my opinion, and I watch every play of the Kelsey Center in Philadelphia, those two have not played well in a month. Him and his brother have not played well in a month. And I just think they got too much going on in their lives. They have the #1 podcast on earth. They have, they're doing 75 commercials. But I think when the playoffs start, I think they get refocused. And here's the other reason why I think the Chiefs are dangerous. The AFC, I don't think, turned into what many of us thought because Joe Burrow got injured. Right. The Bills have struggled. We don't even know if they're going to make it into the playoffs. Look who has a chance to make the playoffs, the Texans and the Colts. Right. That's not something we thought about. So I think we have to see how the AFC shapes out, too, because if Buffalo doesn't make it, that's good for Kansas City. Buffalo gives them a lot of trouble. And we have to see how it shakes out. But I'm telling you right now, I guess I haven't been a believer in the Ravens as much as other people. I guess I have to now, but I wouldn't count out the Chiefs. I just wouldn't. I think they reset when they get in the playoffs.
And nobody's betting them right now at plus 900. I actually think there's value there. I'm not telling you to go risk a mortgage payment on it, but you're not going to see a number get any better than it is right now. I don't think the Eagles are going to win because I don't think they're going to get through the 49ers this time. I actually think if Dallas can go on a run and play, but then again, you're talking about the same thing about Lamar Jackson you could say about Dak Prescott. He hasn't proven anything either.
And
So,
I would have liked their chances more if they didn't have to play the Niners until the end. Now you have to go on the road. You're going to get the Niners earlier
right.
if you're you know what I mean? Like, you never know. Maybe Debo gets hurt. He's always hurt. Maybe, but your odds of beating the Niners are better the later you can play them. And I just don't like the fact that the Cowboys are going to have to play them, after they would play Tampa Bay or whatever. So I thought that loss to the Dolphins. My son and I were watching it. He's an Eagles fan, and I'm like, man, that is a huge, huge loss for you, because if Dallas had won that game, they're going to beat the Lions at home. I guarantee it.
No,
they would have gotten that 2 seed.
Well, we're going to talk more. I tell you what is on my big Bucks card. The Detroit-Dallas game is on my big Bucks card. So
Me too.
We'll definitely be talking about that tomorrow. And Gabe says, he says, Mahomes equals Saban. You won't catch him betting against either in a big game ever again. It's really hard to bet against Mahomes. Mahomes won me some money last year in the Super Bowl because everybody thought the Eagles and the tush push were going to roll to victory. And maybe they should have. Maybe they got hosed. I don't know. But the fact is, when all was said and done, I was the one with the money because I bet on the Chiefs. Not betting against them either. All right, before we go, and again, tomorrow we are going to have Big Bucks tomorrow on Friday instead of it being on Thursday. The crew will be with us. We'll go over kind of the last 2 weeks and what we missed. Give you an update, tell you who the turkey of the week is, and have our picks for this week. We got some interesting picks because, frankly, Thomas, we're that time of the year where we've got a lot to talk about. We're going to spend most of our show tomorrow talking about college bowls, and is that big weekend? It's the playoff weekend coming up.
Yeah, no, it's gonna be a great couple of days of football. New Year's Eve. See, remember when they first put the playoff games on New Year's Eve, and I was against it. Then I realized I don't do anything anymore. So I was like, well, now the playoff games are not, but now we got NFL Sunday. So today was the last day that I have left the house until the new year. I will not be out of the house again until 2024.
All right, we got a question. Carlos is asking, would you start Josh Allen or would you start Brock Purdy? I can stop you right there. Brock Purdy plays against Washington. I don't care if they're playing in San Francisco, in Washington, and Alaska, or on the North Pole on ice. I'm taking Brock Purdy. I'm taking any quarterback that's playing against the Washington Commanders. And I know Josh Allen doesn't have a bad matchup either, but I'm still taking Brock Purdy, so that's my answer.
Yeah, I have a pick tomorrow in Big Bucks associated with that game. I let me tell you this. I've never been more confident in my life than that Brock Purdy is going to rebound this week and have a massive if you have 49ers like I do in your fantasy team, this is going to be the week that if you made the championship game, they're going to go crazy on that pitiful Washington defense.
Yeah, Brock Purdy is the kind of guy, I promise you. That 4 interception game is sticking in his craw. He can't wait to get out there this week. So I think Brock Purdy is going to have.
And he has the right opponent to get better.
Yeah, it's not my best bets, but I thought about it. But just because it's -13. It's hard to put -13 on the road in my best bets, but I do think San Francisco whips up on the Commanders this week. I really do. All right, that is going to be just about it. Again, tomorrow we will have Big Bucks, and we will talk about the College Bowl season. Any final thoughts?
No, I mean, great weekend. Hopefully you're right. Hopefully the Saints get a win and take us into the final week with something to root for.
Yeah, we had our final Datitude podcast of the year, of the 2023 year, earlier today. We had a fun one, too. We had, if you've ever heard of Hold the Mayo, he does his Red Beans and Rice Monday show on YouTube and Twitter. It's hilarious. I'm telling you. You got to go watch him. But anyway, he came on the show. We kind of went through the Saints season, and he has a live show after every Saints game where he's got people calling up. Let's just say people say it the way they want to say it. So it's kind of explicit at times because that's who people are, right? We've got a heart. We've got a lot of passion in New Orleans, and I think, not to rehash it, we can talk about it another time, but I think one of the biggest problems that the Saints have had is they're not showing any passion, and people in New Orleans are very passionate.
Yeah.
And if you don't give them the effort, you can stink. but at least give them effort and stink. If you don't give them effort and you stink or you're average, it's not gonna go too well for you. So I think that's kind of what's happened. Anyway, go check it out. Show number 200. Can't believe that they let me do 200 podcasts here, but they have. That's where we are. We had a lot of fun. We'll have a lot of fun tomorrow. Again, talking about the Bulls, releasing big bucks. The whole crew will be here. We hope you will be here at a special time at 3 o'clock and join us here on all these same channels. We'll see you tomorrow. Have a great night. Thursday night football. Do we care? Probably not.
No.
Go Brown. Go Bulls. We'll talk to you later.